Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker. My name is Glen and alongside Matt Ferrara. We finally made it. The Super Bowl is set, and Championship Sunday has come and gone. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeat the Green Bay Packers by a score of 31-26, and then the Kansas City Chiefs defeat the Buffalo Bills by a score of 38-24. A lot to talk about in terms of both games. Both games were very entertaining. One game went the way that we thought it would go, that we alluded to last episode. One didn't, and there's a big coaching kind of gaffe that we're going to get into, and that's where we're going to start. Green Bay defeated by Tampa Bay. Tom Brady going to another Super Bowl, his first season in Tampa, going to the Super Bowl. It's going to be the first time in the NFL's history that the host city's team will be in the Super Bowl. Super Bowl's in Tampa. Tampa Bay Buccaneers play in Tampa, obviously, and this is the 10th Super Bowl for Tom Brady. We'll get into the Buccaneers and what they've accomplished in a second. But the big takeaway from this game, well, there's really two. One was the final sequence of play calling that Matt Lefleur had with Aaron Rodgers, obviously not going for it on fourth and goal, kicking the field goal, getting within five, and trusting your defense against Tom Brady. And then when they got to that point where they had a third down, a very interesting pass interference slash hold. I forget exactly what penalty it was, when for the entire game, the officiating let the guys play the entire time, didn't really call a lot. And they decided at that point, now they want to implement their stamp into the game and call a game ending, essentially, penalty on the Green Bay defense. We'll start with the coaching decision to not go for it on that fourth down. When they were lining up for the field goal, I was like half paying attention to the game. I think I was eating or something, and then I like glanced up and they're kicking the field goal, and I was like, "That's not right. That's not what you're supposed to do." And I feel like we've had
Yeah.
this conversation the last couple weeks in this playoff, in this 2020 NFL playoffs, with teams and coaches going with this analytical kind of aspect to coaching and decision making. And this was just the wrong decision. You can make the argument that, on the third down play, Aaron Rodgers had a lane to get to the pylon. He didn't need to throw it to Adams for the incompletion. He could have ran it in. If he didn't get to the goal line, he would have gotten to at least the one or two, and then you make the fourth down call easier. But it was fourth and goal from the 8, I believe. Lefleur decides to kick the field goal. They kick the field goal. You're still down by 5, so you still need to stop at a touchdown. So nothing really changed from being down 8. So it was a really bad coaching mistake, and for good reason, Lafleur is taking the brunt of the blame in the hours and days since that game.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's just shades of Kevin Cash with Blake Snell, with now LaFleur and Rodgers, of just the distrust in the coaching staff. And Rodgers kind of came out after the game, and he didn't really grill LaFleur too hard, but he kind of just said, like, it wasn't my call. So you kind of could feel his anger, I guess, in it. And again, it's just, I don't understand why you make that call, like to kick the field. Like, it makes no sense. And everybody you see on sports media and Twitter, whether you're an analyst or not, is saying, you have the MVP of the league in Aaron Rodgers, and you need one play and you need 7-8 yards, whatever it was, to get a touchdown. That's your ball game right there. And you still had 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. So basically 4 timeouts if you didn't get it. So why wouldn't you just at least attempt to, instead of kicking the field goal, then onside trying to get that, which has like a 99% failure rate. And then kind of, it didn't make any sense to me. And I don't know, again, who was telling LaFleur, if he himself was like, yeah, we're going to kick the field goal, take the points. Like, just made absolutely no sense. And this is one of those things that you referenced before, saying the analytics, I guess, told him to take the 3 points. But in everybody else's eyes in the NFL, that's not what you do there. Andy Reid, again, if he was coaching the Packers in that situation, he's going for it on fourth down. And I think every other smart coach would be doing the same.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at it mathematically, really, there's really no difference between being down 8 points and being down 5. You still need,
Mhm.
like, even if they didn't get the fourth down, you're still in the same position that you are in down. If you kick the field goal and we're down 5 points, you still need to get a stop, and you still need to then score a touchdown, because you can't get 5 points on a field goal. You need a touchdown. So
Mhm.
just like the risk, the I guess playing it safe is what I'm trying to say. Is playing it safe there to get 3 points to cut it to 5 is not worth trusting. I guess giving it back to your defense for. You might as well just go for the end zone, and then you have an opportunity there to tie the game right there. Instead, you have to trust your defense against Tom Brady, who's probably the all-time best quarterback, arguably ever. And all he needed was a first down. And you trust your defense to get that stop, and then boom, automatic on first down, they gain like 9 yards, where they have to intentionally have an encroachment penalty to start again. And then they had the stop really, and then kind of a controversial call, but it didn't make sense because you have Aaron Rodgers. He's the MVP of the league. He's the MVP of the league by a lot. He's had this amazing season. You just need 8 yards. I know that the previous downs in that kind of possession weren't, great, but how many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers make something happen on fourth down? How many times have we seen him make much more difficult down and distances to save the Packers over the years? I mean, time and time again, whether it be Hail Marys, whether it be scrambling with his feet to extend the play to find someone in the back corner of the end zone. He's done it time and time again. And I know LaFleur hasn't been there for all of those instances. It was Mike McCarthy for a long time, but you have to have common sense. Like, I don't care what the analytics tell you. The analytics are formulated through similar situations with a bunch of different teams, with a bunch of different quarterbacks. But you have Aaron Rodgers. So who do you trust more, or who would someone with common sense trust more, Aaron Rodgers or the Packers defense? The answer is always going to be Aaron Rodgers 100 out of 100 times.
Yeah, again, it's just throughout like kind of that end of the fourth quarter, like you have to be assuming like, listen, we have a finite number of chances to score and to try to win this game. And they were down to basically their last chance, and then they decided to take one away, and they took it out of the offensive's hand. It just it made no sense to me, and I'm very curious like what his reasoning was, because I still haven't seen it. Besides, like, I haven't seen any thoughts on what he said about it. Yeah, so I'm kind of waiting for
And I
stuff
haven't
like
seen
that to
anybody really
surface.
defend him. This is a universally panned coaching decision. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if everybody at home watching knew that this was this was a mistake and this is what he shouldn't have done. And probably everyone on the
Hmm.
sideline was probably thinking the same thing when they were lining up for the field goal. They were probably like, why is this happening? Even the Buccaneers were probably like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Nobody's in LaFleur's ear. None of his coordinators, none of his coaching staffs in his ear. Like, we should go for it here, because the game after Kansas City, they have a coach in Andy Reid. It's the complete opposite. They don't give a fuck. They'll
Hmm.
go for fourth down whenever they want to, and they have the confidence to
Yeah.
get it every single time because they have Patrick Mahomes or Chad Henne on that one instance last 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah.
if Andy Reid can have the confidence in Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers is on the level of Patrick Mahomes, obviously. So why
Hmm.
does Reid trust Mahomes, but LaFleur, for whatever reason, doesn't trust Rodgers? It just fundamentally doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and again, while on the topic of coaching blunders, we can segue back to the last play of the first half with the
Oh yeah,
Buccaneers. They they were too far away from field goal, and there was what, like 6 seconds left, something like that. So they would have need to do like a crazy quick out, because they had no timeouts. They had to do a little bit of an out route to get out of bounds. But their play call was atrocious. They said it was like single high safety. They're playing like press man defense. They're shading inside and forcing them out, which also made no sense. And then again, you're giving Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback of all time, that kind of defense. With again, he knew exactly where he was going to the ball. They threw it to that wide receiver. I think what Miller, his name is. He runs like a 4.340, just absolutely blazed. Looked off the single high safety on the center, bang, dropped a dime down the left side. It just made absolutely no sense. And that was a play that right when it happened, just not even as a fan of the Packers or Buccaneers, but you just knew that was going to come back to haunt them.
yeah. I mean, it seems to happen a lot with the Packers in terms of playoff Hail Marys. They're always involved in one. It's either
Hmm.
Rodgers or Brady yesterday, or Eli to Hakeem Nicks in that playoff run. It was that was the first thought in my head. Like, it's always the Packers that are involved with some crazy Hail Mary, whether it be Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson in Arizona. There's always some Hail Mary weird thing to happen with Green Bay. My second thought
Hmm.
was this is on par with the terrible decision that the Jets made against the Raiders a couple months ago
Yeah.
that got Greg Williams fired. It was kind of the
Hmm.
exact same play down the exact same side of
Yeah.
the field with the exact same kind of defensive blunder, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Like you
So
had you
I don't
had
know what
like
they were thinking. I guess they were thinking, okay, we need to protect from these out routes that are going to get them into field goal range for a long field goal. And
Mhm.
they just completely just didn't think or didn't, I guess, put into account the idea that Tom Brady, a future Hall of Fame quarterback who's been to 9 Super Bowls, now is going to go to his 10th, could air it out 50 yards down the field for a touchdown. Once that happened, I was someone who I picked the Packers in this game. When that play
Mhm.
happened, I was like, Tampa might actually win this game. That was the first time I actually thought that Tampa had a shot.
Yeah, no, it gave them so much life, and that's just an absolute demoralizer. And again, like as a player on the Packers, it's like you let that up, you let up 7 points right before half. You're like, God damn! It's like you were playing so well that first half, and then you have that kind of dagger right in to go to the locker room. And then LaFleur commented on that. He's like, "Oh, we got to be better as coaches. We can't let that happen." Blah blah blah. It's like you say you can't let it happen after the fact, then why didn't you step in? Same thing kind of with Adam Gase. Like I know he's the offensive guy, but it's like you're on like press man defense in a Hail Mary situation. Like somebody has to step in. I know a lot of Packer fans and a lot of the sports media saying Pettin, whoever their DC is, should be probably fired for that decision.
I'm looking at the highlights now because I want to see if the Packers had any timeouts yet left at the end of that half. But as you said, like they saw what everyone was lined up to do. Nobody
Mhm.
decided, hey, let's call a timeout here. Let's see. They had one
And then
timeout
you'll
left.
even
So if they didn't like what they saw at the line of scrimmage before the snap,
yeah,
they could have easily just burnt a timeout there. So it's just really
yeah.
bad coaching on the Packers' part at the end of each half, both with the
Mhm.
Hail Mary that happened at the end of the first half, and then obviously
Yeah.
the big blunder by LaFleur not going for it on fourth down. Now, do you think that, everyone's going to blame LaFleur now? And for good reason. But do you think
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers should have some of the blame for this game? Or do you think he's completely
Ooh.
innocent
So
of any sort of blame? Because he had a good game. He went
mhm.
33 of
Yeah.
48, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick.
Hmm.
Hard to argue that he didn't do what he needed to do. But again, this seems to
Hmm.
happen a lot. Now, this is a guy that won one Super Bowl 11 years ago now, and he's had a lot of upsets in the playoffs. At what point do we look at Aaron Rodgers for as great as he is, probably, top 10, top 5 quarterback all time, for as great as he is, and he seems to be the common denominator with these playoff shortcomings?
Yeah, it's again, it's not necessarily all on him, but
No,
something that was
I'm
kind of
not saying it's
just,
on him, obviously, but like LaFleur is going
but
to get
a
at
little
least
bit,
80% of the
yeah.
blame. But
Hmm.
5,
Hmm.
10, 15%, do you think Aaron Rodgers deserves a little bit of a, hey, you've been in this position time and time again. You're now 1-4 in championship games.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially, is obviously that second half. Brady had that second half. Brady had 3 picks right there, and I don't think they scored once off. So all right, so here we go. So after Brady's first interception in the second half, the Packers scored, and then his second interception they punted. His third interception they punted again. So the points off turnovers right there in those last two situations were crucial, and that basically ended the game because
What did he had? Rodgers had one pick. Did Tampa score off that pick?
so let's look at yeah, exactly. So points off turnovers, that was kind of just the name of the game. And the Buccaneers, you noticed that right when they had any sort of interception, and then even the fumble too, when Aaron Jones fumbled it, they scored right after that too. So what's that, 14 points off turnovers for the Bucs, and then for the Packers off turnovers was 7.
7.
So I mean,
Yeah. And you have 3
simple
turnovers.
as
You need to
that.
do better than that. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you're the MVP of the league. When somebody's handing you the ball, I'm assuming they got in much
Three
better
times,
field.
yeah.
Yeah, much better field position than a normal punt. You got to put the
Hmm.
ball in the end zone. Now, I guess my point for this like part of the conversation is that it shouldn't go all on LeFleur. He isn't 100% the reason
Yeah.
why they lost. They were losing into that going up to that point. You could make the argument that you could make a really good argument that field goal ties the game if there's not a drop on the 2-point conversion. The previous Packers score. I think Lazard dropped the ball. He was wide open and he dropped it. Instead of a 3-point game, it's a 5-point game. And when that happened, I texted a couple of friends. I'm like, that's going to end up haunting them. And it ended up haunting them. So Green Bay loses. Before we talk about Rodgers' future in Green Bay, because he had a press conference where he said, I don't know what's going to happen. Everyone went crazy. Let's just talk about the officiating for a second, because the officiating was terrible.
Yes.
Like I like it. I actually like when officials, like, especially in a playoff game, I like it when they let the guys play and let them determine what happens and who wins the game. I hate when flags are just consistently thrown, right? Like what happened a couple years ago in New Orleans is an absolute sin. Like that should never happen ever again.
That was egregious. Yeah.
That was the worst. And then once that's happened, I'm like, you know what? No more penalties in the playoff game. Just let them play. But there were a lot of, clearly obvious penalties that were not called, one, for the first 58 minutes of the game. And then with all that, that's fine if you're going to do it on both sides. But to have like a very, I guess, a very soft hold with the holding of the jersey at the end of the game, which is an absolute penalty by definition of the rule. It's a penalty. But when you go the entire 58 minutes before that of not calling that and then decide to call it with the game on the line, that's a real bad job by the NFL.
Yeah, I think Goodell has to step in. I pray to God that those refs aren't the crew doing the Super Bowl, because it was atrocious. And I agree to some extent that, yeah, you want to let them play. And I think what I mean by that, and I think what a lot of people mean by that, is like, say there's a 50-50 ball. That's where you kind of let them play. It's like maybe you allow a little bit of hand fighting, but there were holds and pass interferences before the ball was even kind of thrown, period. And you saw it with one of Rodgers' picks that the wide receiver got held a little bit and then basically catapulted the DB from the Bucs to pick it off. So the worst part is that they were keeping it consistent at the very least. It was even for both teams. And then in the most crucial part of the game, that fourth quarter, then they decide to do their job. And it just like, it pisses me off so much. It's because like you've been doing a terrible job the whole entire game. And now you want to kind of change or have that inconsistency. It changes the whole kind of outlook at the game. And it almost seems like they threw that flag to make up for all the flags they missed before. And that's the biggest thing that I hate just about sports in general. And I think obviously officiating has just such a huge role in the outcomes of games. I mean, you see it in basketball when there's fouls called every 2 seconds. You obviously see it in baseball with the strike zone. And it's something that they need to address. I don't know if that means maybe being able to challenge PI calls in the playoffs, because I know they tried it last year and they kind of got rid of it, but maybe in the playoffs you allow it again. But it was such a bad job. And then they try to kind of right their wrongs in my eyes by throwing that last flag, which again, we both agree. And I think everyone agrees that it was a flag. I mean, the guy's jersey was pulled, basically stretched out 2 feet. So it's like, how do you not call that then? So it just an overall awful job that costs probably the Packers a potential Super Bowl.
I think what makes people mad is not bad officiating, but just inconsistent officiating. If you're
agreed,
if you have a bad officiating crew for the entire game on both sides, I think both fan bases, both teams, the media, whatever, they'll just say, it was terrible, but it was on both sides. Now when there's one call that just goes really in favor of one team, and that one call is the last call of the game, and it determines the winner and loser of the game, that's when people are going to get upset. Like in baseball, like imagine, a guy has a super wide strike zone for 8.5 innings, right? And then in the bottom of the ninth, all of a sudden he tightens it up. Like that's gonna piss people off. That's kind of what we saw in this game. Because in the first, second, third quarter, that jersey pull that we saw at the last play, that's not called. But now, since the game's on the line, it's a close game, it's the playoffs, I guess they paid attention a little bit more. They were more focused on what was going on during the play, and then that's when they saw it. I think referees
Yeah.
need to just have kind of some self-awareness for how the game has transpired to the point of where it's to the end of the game, and then kind of not not like ignore a blatant penalty, but like unless it's unless it's egregious, you shouldn't call it in that situation.
And the craziest part, I think, about that last call was how late the flag came in.
Yeah.
And
Even Joe
everybody
Buck said right
saw that.
away. Joe Buck right
It
away
was
was said that
like
was a really late flag.
everybody was like, the play happened. You saw the jersey get pulled, but everyone was like, one Mississippi, two Mississippi, three Mississippi. Like, are they really not gonna call a flag? And then you see it come in, and I'm like, again, it's like if they didn't throw a flag there, I think I would have been probably pissed either way because every kind of penalty up to that point was yes bad that they missed, but this one just looked even worse because you saw that jersey get stretched out so much, and the fact that it seemed like they really hesitated throwing the flag, it was just very strange to me. It just seemed like
Yeah.
they were all kind of on the same page to like let them play.
Yeah, it's like all the referees looked at each other like, are we going to throw this? Are we going to throw it? And then someone
Yeah.
finally decide, yeah, I guess I have to throw it. It's
Hmm.
just sad that it ended like that because it was a really good game. Like it was you're
Awesome
on your
game.
edge of the seat the entire time. Tampa Bay was up
Hmm.
big. Rodgers is making a second half comeback like he does all so often. And they had an opportunity. I mean, we're going to rip Lefleur for the entire offseason over what he did. But at the end of the
Hmm.
day, it worked because he kicked the field goal down by 5 and you essentially got the stop. But,
Yeah.
you got that flag. After the game, they asked Rodgers about his future. He was very quiet and very sneaky, I guess, about his future. Says he has no idea what's going to happen. I think personally, Matt, that it's kind of just an empty threat. I don't think he's going
Yeah.
anywhere. But
Yeah. I mean,
where
just
would he
look.
go that gives him a chance to win in an NFC where, the AFC is, miles and miles and miles ahead of the
Mhm.
NFC in terms of talent, in terms of quarterbacks, what have you. And then the NFC, it's really a 43-year-old Tom Brady, and that's kind of who you're measuring up yourself against. I don't see
Yeah.
unless his ego just completely takes him out of Green Bay. I don't see a better situation
Hmm.
for him out there.
The only there's only really two like realistic possibilities. 'Cause obviously, you could say any team not with with the quarterback not named Mahomes is going to go after Aaron Rodgers. Same kind of thing we said about Watson too. So not looking at all those teams, just two teams in particular are one, the Colts again being they have the whole team built. They just kind of need a plug and play quarterback. But two, and this is the one that I think is a more realistic possibility, is the Niners because you have to
Yeah.
remember he's a Cali kid, so he has his roots over there. So maybe that's something that kind of interests him and he wants to go there. And I know the Niners seem to be very, very done with Garoppolo.
Yeah, and the Niners, everybody forgets because they were so terrible this year. They were so banged up. They made the Super Bowl last year, and they beat Rodgers
Hmm.
to get there in the NFC Championship game. I don't think the Colts are realistic for Rodgers. I think the Colts want like a younger guy. I think Stafford's going to end up
Hmm.
being that guy. But if I'm Rodgers, I don't want to go to the AFC. I don't want to go to the AFC at my age, this late in my
Hmm.
career, and I have to deal with all these, mid-20s superstars. I might not even see a championship game ever again if I go to the
Yeah.
AFC. Like if he goes to the Colts or the Patriots, right?
Hmm.
Or name any other AFC team out there, the
Yeah.
Dolphins that need a quarterback. Like there's no guarantee you get by a Mahomes or a Watson or a Jackson or an Allen. It's much tougher over
Hmm.
there than in the NFC. I think he has a nice, comfortable, safe home in the NFC. And I think if he goes anywhere,
Hmm.
I think you make a good point. I think it would be San Francisco. With that said, I don't think he will.
No, I think that was a very just emotional thing. And half of his statement was true, saying that a lot of people, a lot of his teammates, like kind of futures are on the line because Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, both the running backs, are up for free agency. I'm sure they'll bring one of them back, but I'm pretty sure for the most part, everyone else is kind of back. And when you look at the Packers roster, like they're still awesome. Like they maybe they lack like one. maybe they lack like a safety. I don't know. Maybe, but like their D
They
line
need
was
to help
getting
him
good
out
pass
though,
rush.
because like how much better would the Packers have been this year if they drafted in the first round a guy to help Rodgers instead of replace him? That's a
Yeah,
big
see
difference.
that's a question that we're gonna have to answer once Rodgers is gone. Like if Love comes in seamlessly and keeps the Packers competitive, then you're gonna say, all right, well, it made sense. But I do definitely understand that thought process, especially because they traded up a couple spots to get
Yeah,
up there.
but
And I'm
what
pretty
like
sure.
who would you rather have now for a team that has a Super Bowl window open? Would you rather have the heir apparent that might not see the light of day for 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
or would you rather have, that big defensive guy that's going to make that stop, or another weapon for Rodgers to complement Devontae Adams? Like, you could make the argument that if they picked somebody else, just Jeffries, a receiver in that first round. Remember
Mhm.
last year was such a heavy receiver draft in the first round,
Yeah.
might make the case that that's the difference right there between a win and a loss. Even though Rodgers was so
Yeah.
great in the regular season, he's going to win the MVP. In
Mhm.
that championship game, maybe that second weapon that they didn't get and they got Jordan Love instead, that was the difference.
Yeah, I think even outside of the draft, I think they were just very lazy in free agency too.
They
I
always
don't
are.
I don't
I
think
don't remember the last
that's
time
what
they
I
would
mean.
sign
So
someone like, oh my God, the Packers got this guy. I don't remember that ever happening.
that's what I mean. So even if we just take the draft out of it, because I think again with Jordan Love, there's a lot to be determined with that question. But I just think, yeah, like their biggest free agent acquisition was what, Tavon Austin in the middle of the season, or their linebacker Kirksey, who had a good game, but it's like nothing jumps off the page even remotely. So I think, and again, this is something I was listening on the Pat McAfee show, was talking about. You look at the Bucs and you look at the Chiefs, like they're selling out right now. I mean, you give Mahomes a $500 million deal. You look at the Bucs, they got Brady and then they got Gronk and they bolstered up that line with, again, like you said, with the first round pick. So those are two teams that are completely selling out to win now. Whereas the Packers are like, they don't really know what they are. They're just good enough because they have Aaron Rodgers and they have good weapons around him. Not
And the
great,
conference
but
is weak.
good. That too. So they don't really know what they're doing. And I feel like to your point that like if they're not going to say get aggressive this offseason, then maybe Rogers says, hey, like I'm out. Like
Yeah.
if you just there's
Yeah, I could
almost nothing
definitely
left
see like
for
a
him.
power play where Rodgers goes up to the ownership. He's like, help me or get rid of me. Because like
Yeah.
he's been carrying that franchise on his shoulders for so long. And it's been
Yeah.
10 years, 11 years since they won that Super Bowl. And they haven't even been
And
back since. It's not like they've been to a couple and
yeah.
lost in an
And
NFC that's
contractually,
hasn't been great. Like if you look at the
yeah,
franchises that have
contractually,
been to the Super Bowl since the Packers, or the NFC
mhm,
representative since the Packers, you got, it hasn't even been the Seahawks. It's been the Eagles. It's been the Falcons. It's been
it's like one hit
the
wonders.
Rams. Like, why are the Rams in and
Yeah.
the Packers aren't? Who else? There's
Mhm.
the Panthers. Like all these teams, you're
Yeah.
like
It's
the Niners have made it twice. I think. I don't know.
yeah.
It's a shame, and I think it's
Mhm.
on the organization as itself that Rodgers hasn't been in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, you look at his contract real quick. That so he's owed 37 million next year, and then he has a potential out after that year where they could cut him or trade him, whatever, and it's only like 17 million in dead cap. Now, I don't think you can cut or trade Aaron Rodgers. I really don't, unless he wants to. But you figure he's on contract for the next 3 years.
yeah,
And then he's not re-signing with the Packers. He's either going to retire or he probably goes somewhere else. I would heavily assume. Why not just sell out for the next 3 years? And then at the very least, if at the end of 3 years they don't win, then you plug and play Jordan Love into a perfectly kind of formatted team that is ready
doesn't it make
to
it
kind
even
of.
more silly that you drafted Jordan Love when Rodgers has 4 years left on his contract going into this season?
Well, yeah,
So if he
it almost
plays
seems like
out
it was
all
just.
of it, so if he played this year, he plays the next 3 years, right?
Mhm.
Let's say he's out after that third year, he retires. Then you got Jordan Love for how many more years on his rookie deal? One, to see if he's the guy.
Yeah, that's the it's like, yeah, it's like I don't hate the move as far as going quarterback, but I do kind of hate it as far as doing it in this specific year. Like it almost seemed like a year or if two too early.
Yeah, it's not like they had it's not like Rodgers got hurt, right? Last year and they
Yeah.
bottomed out and they kind of like what the
Hmm.
Colts did. The Colts lucked out
Yeah.
with Peyton Manning getting hurt because they wouldn't have had the one
Literally
seed
lucked out.
advantage. They didn't. I mean, it's not, of course, Peyton Manning getting hurt is not lucky, but
Yeah.
they were opportunistic. That's the better word. They're opportunistic getting that
Yeah.
first overall pick that they wouldn't have got if Peyton Manning played it all that year. So it's
Hmm.
not like that happened to the Packers or Rodgers had like a Peyton Manning type injury and they had,
Hmm.
who was the first quarterback picked last year? I can't even remember.
Andrew Luck.
Burrow. Like if they didn't,
Oh,
if they,
bro, that year. Yeah.
so I don't know. It's rough. We'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting
Hmm.
offseason for the Packers, but they go home. Let's talk about the team that moves on to the Super Bowl, the Bucs. Brady, his 10th Super Bowl, first year in Tampa Bay, goes to the Super Bowl. Like, of course he did. That's just, I guess, the way it
Yeah.
works. I will say, though, Brady's performance was, other than that big long pass at the end of the first half, it wasn't,
Hmm.
a great Tom Brady performance. He was 20 of 36, 280, 3-3. That's not lighting anything up, but he did what he
Yeah.
needed to do to win. Will it be enough against the Chiefs? I don't know. We'll get into that next week when we really dissect that game. But he did what he needed to do.
Hmm.
The Buccaneers are moving on. I thought that going into the season, everyone thought the Buccaneers would be interesting. I don't think
Hmm.
anyone actually thought they'd go to the Super Bowl. I think people were like, if Brady leads the Bucs to the playoffs, maybe wins a round, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wanted to see, and he brought them to the Super
Hmm.
Bowl.
Yeah. It's like, again, it's another one of those things with Brady. It's like, are we really surprised that he's playing in another Super Bowl? And like you said, it's whether he's carrying them or leading them or not. He's part of a team that is going to the Super Bowl for his 10th or 11th time, whatever it is. And it's just, again, it's awesome to see that somebody can do what he's doing at 43 years old. And again, you're looking at just kind of hit the last game there. His first half was insane. He was damn near perfect. Second half obviously went off the rails a little bit with three bad picks, but just in the grand scheme of things, he's still doing enough to win your team games. And he's a smart enough guy where he's going to cut down on the turnovers. He's not a guy who usually turns it over as we see year in year out. So that to me, I wouldn't be worried as a Bucs fan. And then it's like you're 43 years old and there's no signs of stopping or slowing down.
Yeah.
Physically, he's still got the arm. He's only getting smarter. It's crazy. I
We see the
don't know
guys that are
when he's
his
going to stop
age.
playing.
Like he beat the Saints last week, and we saw, Breeze is
Hmm.
what, at least the same age, or maybe even younger by a
Yeah,
year or
like
two.
eight or 16 months younger or
Yeah,
something
and
like that.
his arm is completely done. He has
Shot.
his arm is
Yeah.
completely shot. And Brady, he's flicking up these Hail Marys at the end of halves, scoring touchdowns, bringing his team to Super Bowl. It's something we never really ever seen before. I think a lot of people who hated New England so much and therefore hated Brady never admitted that he's,
Hmm.
the best of all time. But now that he's done it with his second organization, I don't think there's any doubt now, regardless of what happens in a couple weeks at the Super Bowl, that this is
Hmm.
probably the best quarterback we've ever seen. Because what was the knock on
Yeah.
Brady in New England? System guy,
Yeah.
Belichick, kind of a dink and dunk kind of passer, never really airs it out. Hasn't
Hmm.
been like that in Tampa. Now they got off to a slow start by Tom Brady standards in the beginning. I think they started 7-5. They got blown out by the
Yeah.
Chiefs to get to seven and go from 7-4 to seven
And
and
the
five. And
Saints
then
twice.
yeah, and then since then they've rattled off how many wins now, and now are in the Super Bowl. All three playoff games on the road. It's
Hmm.
really impressive. And what's also really impressive that doesn't get a lot of hype because obviously you have Tom Brady. Their defense is really really good. They had 5 sacks
Yeah.
yesterday. Um, Obviously, held Rodgers for that on that controversial um, goal to go situation. Everyone talks about not going for it on fourth down, but give the Buccaneers credit for stopping him on first, second, and third down because not a lot of teams can do that with Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau in January. So you
Hmm.
got to respect that defense.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think again, I want to say we talked about it like maybe preseason, maybe week 1, week 2, but talking about their defense. And it was something that I must have been watching ESPN at the right time. And I think it was only like maybe Lewis Riddick was the only one who really gave them any credit early on in the season. And they have two like rookie safeties or cornerbacks. I know Antoine Winfield is one of them. He was out that game, and I think Armstead or Armstrong, I forgot his name. He was another either slot corner or safety that also got injured in the Packers game. Hopefully, both will be back in the Super Bowl. But I mean, you look at their defensive front. I mean, Ndamukong Suh is still there. Shaq Barrett is a stud. JPP is a stud. Sorry to the Giants fans. Vita Vea came back, former first rounder, D tackle, and then you have Levante David at linebacker. It's just like an absolutely like just perfectly constructed team, just kind of up the middle. And it's just that they're putting insane pressure on Rodgers, and they showed it when they played him earlier in the regular season when the Bucs did, and then you kind of saw it again. Like Rodgers just didn't really like he couldn't just sit there all day like sometimes he usually can. And I think Packers not having Bakhtiari, their left tackle, really showed up and hurt them.
Yeah, Rodgers was running for his life the entire game. 5 sacks. JPP had 2. So I watched Buccaneers games, and then I'm like, oh my god, JPP's still in the league. And then I don't know. I don't want. I don't want to get into it. I mean, it's crazy, but yeah, the defense was great. Brady was good enough. He had a great first half. I'm looking at the final line, so it doesn't cross my head that the first half were so, incredible. But Tampa Bay, man, I don't think anyone really expected because they were so up and down. Remember, there was like, Arians was like kind of critiquing Brady in post-game press conferences. Everyone's like looking around like what's going on over there? Why would you do that? But at the end of the day, it worked. And now they have a chance in the Super Bowl. It's gonna be really interesting to see, Tampa in the Super Bowl in Tampa. It's something we've never seen before. I would assume that, the Buccaneers logos and stuff still get taken down because it's still quote unquote neutral. So I'm not sure.
Probably.
I think they'll still, take the Buccaneers logos down throughout the stadium.
Can't take down the pirate ship.
Take down the pirate ship, or at least make it a little bit more neutral. The only Buccaneers thing we'll see will be it'll be the end. They'll probably keep the same end zone, I guess. I don't know, but
yeah,
I don't think it's going to be a home field advantage because the 22,000 people, I think they're all first responders and healthcare workers from around.
I saw I think it was like 7,500 are, and you figure what the other whatever number that is probably split 50-50 between Bucs and Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm sure the Chiefs will
just
definitely
fans of the
Chiefs
game.
Fans
will
definitely travel, but anything on the secondary market, you would just assume that it would be gobbled up by people from Tampa, right? And it's a shame. It's a shame that we don't have normal circumstances because what would it be like if there was no COVID and stadiums were full capacity? How much of a home field advantage would it be? Because we never seen it, so we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So would the Chiefs fans, would they travel in a large group and kind of negate and make it more of a neutral site? Or would Tampa Bay just completely sell out, buy all the tickets on the secondary market, and you have like an 80-20 advantage for the Buccaneers? We're not going to get to see it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be, and again, you saw it definitely in the Chiefs game, which we'll get into, but those fans, even though it was only probably 8,000, were so loud. Like, I can't wait until we see a full capacity. Like, it's going to be deafening.
Yeah, I know. But like, I was watching both games, and both stadiums looked pretty full. I know it was only 9,000 in Green Bay, but it looked much more than that. It looked at least 50%.
I think, I don't know, they must be fibbing or something. I don't know, but it definitely looked like, especially the Chiefs game, looked like a lot more.
There's a lot of people there, but we will see Tampa Bay in Tampa. That's something I've always wanted to see, so I'm happy we're getting to see it, like a home a home Super Bowl. I think that's really cool. I think that's going to be something that a lot of people are going to be interesting to see. I texted you and Garrett. I think it's going to be a very highly rated Super Bowl. I think it's going to be one of the highest.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into the Chiefs game now, but just really quickly, the old GOAT, right? The old greatest of all time against the kid that, some people might say 15 years from now might eclipse Brady as the greatest of all time. So I think this is kind of that LeBron versus Kobe finals that we never got to see. And we're seeing it in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's just, I think it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be the highest rated and highest viewed kind of Super Bowl. And honestly, a sporting event ever. Like, can you think of anything like bigger? That's what I mean. Everyone's going to be home. And it's like, I can't imagine the numbers it's going to get and just the amount of money that the television networks and just the NFL is going to bring in is going to be absurd. Like again, I don't think I've ever been this excited for a Super Bowl in my life, to be honest.
Well, your team's never
Obviously,
been in
you're different. That's a different story.
Yeah, but I'll agree with you. Of all the
Yeah.
non-Giant Super Bowls in my lifetime or my like NFL fandom consciousness, this is the one I'm most excited about.
Yeah, it's just again, like you said, it's the old versus the young. Is this going to be the changing of the guard, or is this going to be the hey kid, not so fast from Brady? And it's just, I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, and then like Brady, he for his whole career, he's basically been a part of the dynasty. Now he's the guy trying to stop the dynasty, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's
if the
a great
Chiefs
point.
win, that's back to back. That hasn't happened in 20 years. You could easily make the argument that Kansas City's making a dynasty, kind of like the Warriors did,
Yeah.
kind of like how the Yankees did in the 90s, kind of how like the Patriots have done over 20 years. So that is something that we're going to get into a lot of next week's episode because obviously they have the week off in between the championship Sunday and the Super Bowl Sunday. But let's get into the Bills Chiefs. Now, you know, throughout the entire week leading up to this game, Matt, I saw a lot of people taking the Bills, and I would just like scratch my head. I'm like, have you watched the Chiefs play at any game over the last 3 years? Even when they got down 9-0, as someone who was rooting for the Chiefs and someone who loves Mahomes, I was like, that's nothing. Like, I'm not scared at all. I don't think anyone in the building was scared. And they seem to play better when they're behind. But, you know, I think after the 9-0, it was what, a 38 to like 6 run that they made, or 38 to something run. They have this way to turn on a switch and just destroy team. They're just better than everybody else at this point.
Yeah, it's they play better, they're coached better, and it's just talent wise they are better. It's just like their wide receiving core, they're track stars. They're
They didn't
absolute
even have
track
Sammy
stars. And then
Watkins.
that's what I mean. So it's like you took away one of their pieces, and then I remember seeing someone on Twitter was like, "All right, like your only goal basically in the game is to stop either Kelsey or Hill, but both of them eclipsed 100 yards and both had touchdowns or something like that." So it was like
And even if
there's
you
just too
stop
many
one, even
weapons.
if you stop, let's say you stop Hill, Kelsey still can beat you by himself. You can
Easily.
Mahomes can still win a game with Kelsey alone. So you have to stop two. You have to stop both of them, and it's impossible. It's just theoretically impossible to stop both.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of raises the question, like, is this 2020 Chiefs team the greatest offense of all time?
Oh, I don't know. I never thought of that. You're kind of putting me on the spot here. I mean, that 07 Patriots team that went 16-0, that was a great offense. They lost to the Giants, by the way. I'm not sure everybody knows this, but it's a great offense. It's
just like
offense.
I don't know how you game plan against them.
You can't,
again,
because
they
Tyreek Hill is probably
stars.
the fastest wide receiver we've ever seen. Like he
Easily.
can go 0 to 100 real quick. You got Kelsey, who's just a nightmare in the red zone, especially. And then you got Sammy Watkins. Can you imagine if this team had any sort of running game?
Yeah,
if they had any sort of running game, that we should just not play a season.
Yeah, it's just they're just like way too dynamic, and it's like Mahomes doesn't turn the ball over. So you factor that in too, that they're getting their money's worth every time they touch the ball. And then you kind of referenced earlier saying how they play almost better from behind, and I think that's because they play with more urgency. And then when you give the most dynamic team a sense of urgency, they score in 2 seconds. It's just when you watch them play, it's crazy. It's like who is gonna stop that offense?
Yeah, this game did not surprise me at all. A lot of people took the Bills in this game.
No.
I was like, what are you doing? Why would you do something so stupid? Not saying the Bills are bad. They're definitely a very good team, but there's just a level. There's just another level that the Chiefs are on by themselves. I'm kind of tipping my hand over who I'm going to go with next week or 2 weeks from now when I make my prediction for the Super Bowl. But I don't know how anybody beats this team. Even the best, like the 85 Bears defense did not have to deal with what the Chiefs run out there week in and week out with Mahomes and Watkins and Hill and Kelsey and all these different guys. It's a different guy every week. It's stupid. But I guess we'll just spend the most of our time on this game talking about the team that was eliminated, because there's a lot to talk about, especially what happened at the end of the game. Josh Allen, we talk about how Mahomes is just he nothing bothers him, right? There was a few points during this game, not just, the temper flaring at the end. There's a lot of moments in this game where Allen just seemed a little in too deep, right? He's still very young. The first time he's in a championship game, it just seemed to me that the moment got a little ahead of him in this matchup.
Yeah. No, I definitely thought so too. And it's like you said, he's only probably what, 24,
Yeah.
25. So he's still young, and this was his first AFC championship. Now, that doesn't excuse him. I think he's just kind of a little bit soft. And again, like you said, I do think a lot of things bother him. And then you see Mahomes, who's similar age, that things don't bother him nearly as much. I mean, I've seen him throw three or four interceptions against the Dolphins. You would have had no idea. I think Allen just he looked almost just kind of just flustered out there. And you saw it in his play. I mean, he got sacked 4 times, but he got sacked 4 times for 53 yards. That's like an absurd amount of yards to lose per sack. So like that's something it just looked like maybe he was trying to do too much. I mean, again, you saw it at the end of the game that they were only down like 14 or 16 and they're taking crazy long sacks. It's like you're still in the game. But it just seemed like the game was they already kind of admitted defeat by the way they were playing and kind of he was playing. And then you saw that everything went off the rails by the end.
Yeah, he definitely needs to learn to throw the ball away in these situations and not try to be the hero. The kind of shuffle pass into the face mask of Okafor was completely uncalled for and just completely stupid. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know what prompted him to do that. I don't know if Okafor said something after the sack, but you can't do that. I don't care if you're losing. I don't care if you're embarrassed by how you've played. That's the difference between, a Josh Allen and a Patrick Mahomes. Like who's going to be
Yeah.
like mature adult in the room where even though things don't go well, you don't allow yourself to unravel. Now 9-0
Yeah.
isn't a insurmountable lead for any quarterback, let alone Patrick Mahomes. But you go back a year ago, they were down 24-0 to the Texans in the divisional round.
Yeah.
They were down a lot. Then I don't have the exact number at the top of my head, but they were down in that next AFC championship game against the Titans. Patrick Mahomes didn't act like that. Patrick Mahomes put his head down and he led a comeback. Now, I know there was a lot more time in those 2 games for Mahomes to make a comeback than the 3 minutes left for Allen. It was pretty much decided at that point. But just like the principle of being a franchise quarterback, being a leader, you can't make petty, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties like that. That's just really bad, and that should be a lesson learned for the future because I think Allen's going to be really good. I don't think this is the last time we've seen the Bills on this weekend, this championship weekend. I think they'll be back before it's all said and done with Josh Allen, but I think he needs to learn from this mistake because that's just not how a franchise quarterback conducts himself.
Yeah, I get so confused with football, and you just see the tempers flare. It's like honestly, it's like you're grown men. How dumb can you be? I mean, you saw it with Allen's obviously penalty. Then you see the linemen coming over, barreling each other over. Then the next play they're throwing fists. It's like you're still in this game. Like I know it may be a very tough deficit to come back from, but you're still in this game. And you saw they got the onside kick shortly after or shortly before. It's like you prove you still can do it, but it was such a weird thing to unfold. And again, as a Dolphin fan, I loved it. I loved every second of it because I think Sean McDermott is a great coach, and discipline stuff like that I think stems from the coaching staff. But to see them kind of end their whole season on a sour note like that, I think it was a complete joke on their part. And I think the Bills, for kind of what they did towards the end, it was laughable because they honestly, who knows what happens if you don't give the Chiefs 15 yards and all those kind of unnecessary penalties and stuff like that.
Yeah, because you're still down. Well, they were down 16, right, or 17?
I believe it was 6, maybe even 17. Something. It was
like 17 that. Because I think they went for 2 and didn't get it when they didn't really need the 2, which would have made it 16
they could have went for
if they
1.
just got the 1, which is another conversation we can have about another coaching mistake. Like, why go for 2 there when you don't need it? But I guess we'll shelve it because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But the Bills need to do better than that. And I saw a video at the end of the game where Diggs was the only one watching the celebration. Diggs is a guy. I think Diggs, he kind of got a little heated too. I think he was shoving around, but
he almost got into a fight too. And then Isaiah McKenzie had to hold him back, and then he tried to throw him away.
He had that run with the Vikings a few years ago. He should know better, but it wasn't a good look for Buffalo. But with that said, I still think that they're gonna. I think they're gonna be fine. I think they have a good core, but I think it's obvious that they were just not ready for this game. Not in terms of preparation, but just talent-wise and just, I guess, being on the level of what the Chiefs have experienced the last couple of years. They just weren't ready for Kansas City.
Yeah. And I know no one for some reason seems to want to say it because everybody's been on the Josh Allen train. And again, he had a phenomenal season. I still think he's going to be a good quarterback. He's not on Mahomes' level. We can get that out of the
No,
way now. But the
wasn't great.
last 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks, he did not play well. And you could say, yes, the defense played well against him. But this game specifically, if you go back and watch the highlights or whatever, the Chiefs dropped probably 3 picks of his. And then a lot of the plays he was making was just staring down one receiver and just throwing it as hard as he could and hoping it found a guy.
Yeah,
like you saw his
high.
connect.
Yeah, there was a lot of times,
Yeah,
a lot of throws in this game where I'm like, this kid's nervous here. And that,
yes.
not everyone not everyone has like a stone face like Patrick Mahomes
Agreed.
or Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers where the moment doesn't get too big for them. Some guys need to like settle down. And I think that happens in your first championship game. And I think the next time Allen's in this situation, I think he'll perform a lot better. But there are definitely throws that I remember one pass that was just in the hands of the cornerback, and he just stared him down the whole time because the way the TV angle was, it was down the far sideline that way you can see. Everyone watching on TV can see. And once the ball left his hand, I said out loud, "That's a pick." And unfortunately for the Chiefs defender, he dropped it. But Allen needs to make better decisions, but at the end of the day,
again, it is you weren't probably beating the Chiefs anyway, but it's all right to say that he had a bad 2 weeks. He had a bad game against the Chiefs, and he had a bad game against the Ravens.
And you can make the argument that they were fortunate to get past Indianapolis too.
I agree there too, but that's what I mean. I don't know why people are so afraid to say like he did bad. Like no one's saying he's a bad quarterback, but he had 2 bad weeks. And I said that after the Colts game. I don't know, maybe to you or to Stick. I forgot who it was to, but I was saying that the Buffalo's offense was looking a little suspect. Again, they weren't dazzling me like you saw a week prior when they demolished the Dolphins. Like they weren't doing much. And again, you saw where they had a pick 6 that basically won them the game against the Ravens. So they only scored, the offense only scored 10 points. So, and 3 of those are the kicker anyway. So he only had 1 offensive touchdown. And then it was kind of no surprise to see that even this game too, whether you want to say the Chiefs they played well on defense or not, they just didn't do well. And like one of the touchdowns was kind of a little bit of a garbage time towards the end. But prior to that, it was just very flat on their part.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for the Bills. I mean, I'm sure I've said before, like in the last couple of minutes, I think they'll be back, but it's not gonna get any easier for them because Mahomes isn't going anywhere. He's gonna be on the Chiefs for the next 20 years, maybe, right? And then the Bills' own division, this was kind of a transitional year for the AFC East, where they were the only team really built to win. Now next year, you would think the Dolphins get better. The Dolphins are gonna get much better with the picks and caps they have. The Jets, if they get Deshaun Watson and spend their money wisely, they could be right up there.
Yeah.
And that one of these quarterbacks that are in limbo to move somewhere are going to end up in the hands of Bill Belichick. So Buffalo, 13-3, kind of ran away with the AFC East with a lot of teams that are kind of still building. Eventually, those teams are going to be built up to compete with Buffalo. So Buffalo might have had their best chance to glide through a division and get to the championship Sunday. It's going to be much tougher for them moving forward in the next few years because the AFC East is going to improve as long as those organizations make the right calls with their draft picks and their roster construction.
Yeah, and again, at the very least, if you want to take the Dolphins and Jets out of it, the Patriots are going to be a ton better next year. Yeah. You just know for a fact because that defense is still intact. They still have everybody, and they're going to get everybody they lost from COVID back. And again, they're going to get a quarterback who's going to be better than Cam Newton. That shouldn't be too hard to find. And I think they're still going to restock on because they have a ton of cap space too, restock on some wide receivers that they haven't really had in the past 2-3 years. So again, even taking away 2 teams out of the AFCs, for a fact that the Patriots are going to be giving the Bills a run for their money.
You think the Patriots reunite with Garoppolo?
So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't.
But
see
do you
the
think
Patriots...
they'll go with like a Stafford or a higher pedigree quarterback?
See, the reason I want to say no is because they clearly liked Garoppolo, and I know you say, all right, well they trade him away too, but there was obviously some internal oddities going on with Brady wanting Garoppolo out and stuff like that. But they held on to Garoppolo and they parted with him for second round pick, which is very good compensation. And I think he's a guy that obviously is familiar with the system.
Mhm.
So kind of who knows really
And
what happens.
Belichick
I
loves
would
him because Belichick actually picked him over
exactly.
Brady, and it was a craft
Yeah.
decision to do it the other way.
So I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if Garoppolo gets reunited in New England. However, I don't think the Patriots are going to overpay by any means.
Where do you think Stafford ends up?
I think the Patriots are an option. I think Stafford's best bet is probably Indy.
I
I
think so
think
too.
it's not gonna cost Indy too much to get him. Maybe at the most a first round pick, but I still don't think so. I think maybe a 2 and a 3. And I think Indy again is just they're a perfect team right now because they still don't really have anyone up for extensions, any key guys. So this is another kind of window for them to say, hey, bring in Stafford for 2 years. And then by the time he's gone, you're hopefully going to have someone on deck. And they're in a very weird situation, the Colts, that they're almost built for plug and play guys like every 2 to 3 years. So if it's working, so be it. But
Yeah.
eventually you're going to need a long-term plan.
There's this offseason for the NFL is going to be crazy because you got a Dak.
I think so too.
Dak Prescott needs to be figured out one way or the other. Where's
Mhm.
Deshaun Watson going to go? Because it came out that even if they hire he wants them to hire now, he still wants out. He doesn't care anymore.
Mhm.
There's Stafford, there's Garoppolo, there's maybe Rodgers. There's so many quarterbacks in the air this offseason. I don't think we've ever seen so many quarterbacks that are up for grabs. And then you look at who's available in the draft. All these quarterbacks in the draft. I think there's going to be a lot of quarterback movements this offseason.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there is that obviously trades and free agency happen before the draft. So I think every mock draft that we'll eventually get to and every mock draft that you see with teams taking quarterbacks, that all is probably going to do a 180 depending on what they do in free agency beforehand.
I don't take mock drafts seriously until like April. Like
You can't.
I
I
look at
love
them.
doing them.
I look at them for fun and I'll do them, but like
Mhm.
you don't really know anything until like April, right?
Agreed. Yeah. Again, I'm the same way. I do them religiously, but deep in my mind, I'm like, I know that there's like a very slim chance that any of this is going to be correct. I kind of just do it just to get familiar with some of the guys.
And the combine's going to be virtual, right? Is that how they're doing it?
Well, they have the Senior Bowl that starts, I think tomorrow is the first time, and the Dolphins are coaching one team, the Panthers are coaching the other. But I still think they're having the combine, but there's no pro days. There's no like individual workouts that they usually could do. So the Senior Bowl is going to get a lot of eyes on it, I think, from a lot of teams. And obviously scouts and stuff like that from the NFL teams are still there anyway. But I think there's going to be a little bit more emphasis because they know this might be the only chance you get your hands on them.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be completely different because they're not gonna be there. They can't do face-to-face interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be a crazy offseason. Carson
I
Wentz, Jalen Hurts, another quarterback situation that needs to be fixed. There's going to be no shortage of things for us to talk about during the offseason.
Again, and the NFL isn't like the MLB where stuff doesn't happen. I think everything is going to be quickly. Awesome.
Things are going to happen really quickly. Next week, we are going to get into the Super Bowl matchup between Tampa Bay and Kansas City. We're gonna dedicate the entire hour to that game. I think this is an absolutely unbelievable matchup we're gonna get. I think this is exactly what everybody would probably want. Like outside the team that you root for and you're a fan of getting there, I think that this is probably the most intriguing matchup that you can possibly find for this game.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's everything that this country needs right now with everything with the 2020 that we had, the NFL season. And again, tip of the cap to the NFL too. They didn't have any games canceled. So well done on their part.
NHL does, NBA does, NFL did a great job. Aside from that Bronco game where they didn't have a quarterback, they did good.
Yes, but that was their own fault.
that was their own fault. It's gonna be good. I think the NFL is in good shape. The Weekend performs at halftime. What else am I thinking? What other
I'll
NFL?
pump for that too.
I think Miley Cyrus is doing a pregame show, so you know that I'm going to be all over.
Oh, I didn't know that. For that.
I think it's on TikTok or something. I think TikTok's doing something with that, so I'm all over that.
Oh, that's great.
Love the commercials. Can't wait for what commercials come out.
Yes.
It's Super Bowl weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's Super Bowl Sunday.
It's the best.
There's nothing.
It's a holiday. It's a
And
holiday.
thankfully, there's going to be some people in the stadium, so it's not like an empty, quiet Super Bowl because nobody wants that.
Nope.
And how about Tony Romo predicting after the original Chiefs Buccaneers game that this would be the Super Bowl? The guy's a genius.
It's good. He's getting paid $15-20 million.
Not enough. Double it.
It's never enough.
It's amazing.
Oh my God.
So that will just about do it for this week's episode where we recap the championship Sunday. Next week, as I said, we will do a full preview of Super Bowl 55 between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. But until then, we're going to wrap it up. For Matt Ferrara, my name is Glen and Matt saying so long and enjoy the week off from football this week.